I know why you are called Africa's optimist-in-chief, because every time I hear you speak, sir, I am enthusiastic about being an African because you can demonstrate tangible projects that are changing the landscape across the African continent. I think a huge round of applause. It's fantastic to see these tangible projects coming to fruition and changing the lives of Africans across the board. So to pick up on the opening comments from President Adesina, I'm going to invite up to stage Alain Ebobisse, who is the CEO of Africa 50, Matteo Pella, who is the partner and chief operating officer at Africa Meridian, and Dennis Charles Kouassi, who is Director General of the National de Prévoyance Sociale, CNPS. And then, of course, because our digital economy is on fire, we have 2 Zoom participants in our session. And it is great to have on the line Mr. Obaid Amoran, who is the CEO of ITMA Capital Morocco, and he's also chair of the African Sovereign Investors Forum that President Adesina referenced earlier. And we've also got Professor Javier Aguilar, who's Director Sovereign Wealth Research at IE University. All right, let's get straight into the conversation, and Alain, I'm going to ask you to take the lead. Yeah. Again, referencing just the Abidjan corridor, which you as Africa 50 are involved in. Talk to me about the sovereign wealth funds and their role in Africa's investment landscape.
Well, thank you very much, Browning, for this question. And indeed, listening to Dr. Adesina, my chairman, really his optimism about what we can do on this continent is extremely refreshing. And what is really great is that these are things that are realistic. We can actually do that. Now, turning to the question about the sovereign wealth funds. Look, sovereign wealth funds are extremely important institutions for anybody who wants to invest in the countries where they are located. These are institutions that have a very good knowledge and insight about what's going on in the countries. They understand the priorities of governments. And indeed, they are owned by governments, but they also have the mandate to operate professionally and commercially. So they provide comfort to investors that are co-investing with them in the countries. And I believe just by being present in a project, those sovereign wealth funds provide a political or regulatory risk mitigation, which is de facto, it's not de jure by contract, but just by them being present, reduces the risk, at least the perceived risk from investors. So very important. Now, a couple of things that we've been discussing us at Africa 50 together with the African Sovereign Investors Forum that Dr. Adesina referred to earlier, and that my good friend and brother Obaid is chairing. What we've talked to them about is that it would be good to do a bit more in the project development space, where sovereign wealth funds should actually come in and help build up the pipeline of bankable projects that would be available for investors to come in and co-invest in those projects once the project has been de-risked. So a lot more could be done on that front. The other thing, just to finish, that we've been having those conversations. I mean, we have great relationship at Africa 50 with ASIF, the Association for the African Sovereign Investors Forum. We have great relationship. But one of the things that we've also told them is that, look, it would be good for sovereign wealth funds. Their primary goal is to invest in their own countries. But if they can do some investments, even if it's symbolic, in other countries in Africa, that will provide the comfort that sovereign wealth funds on one particular country can also look at investment in other countries. I am pleased to report that for the first time, the Nigerian Sovereign Investor Authority, NSIA, which is the sovereign wealth fund of Nigeria, is partnering with Africa 50 to co-invest in infrastructure through our Africa 50 Infrastructure Acceleration Fund. So this is one example that we would like to see a bit more, where sovereign wealth fund from one country can also look at investment in other countries. The pension funds are doing that, like CNPS on Cote d'Ivoire is looking at investing in other places in Africa. We want to see a lot more of that. Thank you.
So, Obaid, let me bring you in here. Alain has obviously thrown the floor to you. Given your chairmanship of the African Investors Forum, and effectively, if we look at the situation that Alain is putting forward, he's saying, can sovereign wealth funds help create bankable projects, and will you invest outside of your specific countries? So give me a sense, as the inaugural chair of the African Sovereign Investors Forum, Obaid.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to congratulate President Adesina and AFDB and EIF team for the successful edition of the Market Days, and thank them for the organization of this session dedicated to Sovereign Wealth Fund and aiming to shed the light on our involvement and what we aim to achieve. I think that almost everything has been said by Professor Adesina regarding the investment opportunities and the way to achieve improvement of private sector investment in our continent. But concerning the Sovereign Wealth Fund, I want to emphasize that a reflection had been undertaken on how we can enhance the cooperation and the strategic partnership among ourselves to get to a new level, to cope with and also take the advantage and the challenges of the successive shocks we are experiencing in local and international context. This reflection has led to the creation of the African Sovereign Investment Forum, a platform of 10 sovereign wealth funds to date, and we are happy to see that there are more and more other sovereign wealth funds that are joining us, and we are very keen to the presence and continuous involvement of almost all of them. The objective is to leverage our strengths together and to consolidate the efforts undertaken by each member at their own national level for the benefit of a wider continent. As you have already heard, alone we can go faster, together we can go further. So
Obaid, I think I'm going to jump in there on that. Exactly. Together we can go further. I've just been told that the Honorable Minister of Finance in Nigeria, Zainab Ahmed, is in the audience, and I'd like to invite the Honorable Minister up to the podium just to say a couple of words in terms of context around the session. Honorable Minister.
Good afternoon, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Special respect to my brother, President Adesina, and all of the guests and participants in this forum. I want to apologize for coming late, just came in. And I want to thank you for inviting me to speak on the subject of sovereign wealth funds. This is a topic that we hold very dear in Nigeria. Let me also just remind us, or people that know, that in Nigeria, we started the Sovereign Wealth Fund 10 years ago, right after one of those oil price crashes of the 2000s. And Nigeria's focus then was about stabilization. What we wanted to have was something safe that is tucked away, and also something that will help us to hedge against the cyclical volatility of the oil market. We wanted and needed to save for a rainy day. However, we did not define what a rainy day is. I'm sure many of you will agree that for the last 5 years, we have constantly seen rainy days. It seems to me as if every day is wet, and every day is a rainy day. So when you ask me, as a finance minister, to speak about sovereign wealth funds, I'd like to say part of the challenges for the African sovereign wealth funds is that there's constant rain that we're experiencing, and we have to continuously position ourselves to decide on how to treat each wet day as it comes. We have a growing population. We have climate change in the forms of floods, droughts, and desertification, and there are adverse impacts on food security. We also have pockets of insecurity, at least in my country, Nigeria. Then there's, of course, the pandemic. With these competing demands, it takes a very strong and focused leadership to think about having to save on a continuous and sustained basis. And I'm pleased to say Nigeria has done well. When the Sovereign Wealth Fund in Nigeria commenced, it started operating in 2012 with a capital of $1 billion US. And at that time we had money. Now we don't. But since its inception, the fund did not receive any additional capital until in 2016 and 17, when President Muhammadu Buhari's administration came and he directed that we needed to start saving on a consistent basis. He recognized the importance of needing to save. Therefore, we focus on ensuring that the NSIA gets funded no matter how little, regardless of the fiscal challenges. Our administration had also been gradually injecting money into the NSIA, and now there is even a provision in the PIA that compels that to happen more consistently. At the end of 2021, NSIA's core assets under management has grown to a modest $2.2 billion US since commencement of its operations, and the NSIA has assets under management of $4 billion US, regardless of the rainy days that we had to go through. And the fund has been consistently profitable. The NSIA has proven to be a partner of choice for the federal government as well as for other agencies in the execution of successful delivery of major infrastructure projects and transformational initiatives that have national impacts. Through the NSIA, we have been able to build key roads and bridges under the Presidential Development Fund. We have been able to revive fertilizer blending facilities, starting from 8 at the beginning of administration. Now we have up to 42, almost all of them working at full capacity. And also, we set up the fertilizer initiative and a partnership with Morocco to build an ammonia plant, which is currently ongoing. We're also supporting artisanal and small-scale miners who are building up reserves under the Presidential Artisanal Gold Mining Scheme. We have also commenced our journey towards adoption of clean energy, starting off with the development of several solar power projects, and the NSIA is participating with a 10 megawatts grid solar plant. We have constructed cancer and medical diagnostic centers across the country, and they're doing very well, and we have plans to roll out more. We recently commissioned a state-of-the-art animal feed facility linked to thousands of hectares of maize farms in the north-central part of our country, in Nasarawa State in particular, and we're tackling today's problems as they come head-on. We've allocated a certain proportion of NSIA's funds for investments in innovative pioneer sectors within and outside of Nigeria. So what the CEO said is something that we are already working on in partnership with the Africa 50. And of course, we have a sizable percentage of investments in equities and bonds in Europe, in America, and in Asia. In today's climate, this last fund is the one that actually keeps me awake at night. But we have those investments anyway. Overall, the success of the African sovereign wealth funds are those that strike a balance between meeting the local and immediate needs, such as infrastructure, versus the long-term outlook of stability in periods of distress. Our hope is that the next 5 years will be less dramatic and that we will not have as many wet days as the previous years that we have seen. And in more predictable terms, we hope that the rainy days will not continue to come in the way we have seen them. Thank you very much.
Honorable Minister of Finance of Nigeria, Zainab Ahmed. Another round of applause. Thank you so much, ma'am. So, Matteo, let's pick up on the conversation there in terms of Meridian and the fact that globally you've been operating since 2005, transformational infrastructure into emerging spaces. Since 2015, you established in Africa. Give us a sense of the experience that Meridian is experiencing in terms of transformational infrastructure.
Thank you, Bronwyn, and thank you to IFDB and President Adesina for organizing this event. We indeed, after 10 years of investment in America and Europe, started to invest in Africa in 2015. And we did our very first investment at that time in partnership with a sovereign fund, the FONSIS, the sovereign fund of Senegal, who invited us to join them in Senegal in order to co-develop and invest in a solar power plant. So that's really the way we started in Senegal. And after that, we did many different investments, most of them with FONSIS in different situations. But I think what's interesting in this anecdote is that most of the sovereign funds on the continent, and that's definitely the case of FONSIS, do this role, as Alain said earlier, to give a very strong political signal that the project in which the international investor wants to invest is a project which is one way or the other de-risked, supported by the political leadership, and gives comfort for a first-time investment. So that's very powerful message, and that's what has been done together with FONSIS in Senegal. That's what we did as well in Gabon, where we worked with the FGIS, equivalent institution in Gabon, with whom we developed during a few years a hydro project that we successfully closed. IFDB is one of the lender on this project, and we are building this asset. So that's these partnerships we have been able to set up in, for example, those two countries, which enabled us to create assets. That's really our mission, creating assets in order to deliver essential services on the continent to the communities, to the people, to the governments, and then eventually create portfolios for our investors. And that's the other way we work with sovereign funds, because across our investors, investing in the 3 different funds we manage on the continent, which is more or less $1.5 billion out of a total of $18 billion of equity, we have sovereign funds from the Middle East, sovereign funds from Asia, and they want to access infrastructure assets in Africa. Often they have an issue of size, which is too small, or as President Adesina said, they have a high transactional cost for smaller assets. So they want to access diversified portfolio and large assets through people like us. So
I've got a solution.
So
the African Continental Free Trade Area is going to create that scale, Matteo.
Indeed, I think that's the plan, and that will give the scale to to regional assets like the highway between Lagos and Abidjan, indeed. And that's the scale which is needed. But that's the other way we work with sovereign funds. And I think there is a third one which is not yet developed, but we'd like, of course, to develop, and I think that's something on which we should work all together. That's to, as Alain alluded to, work together with African sovereign funds in order to invest in other countries and to diversify their investment. I mean, there is, of course,
I want to pick up on that theme, but I want to bring Dennis in. I am cognizant of time. Dennis, if I can bring you in from this perspective, from a CNPS perspective, and how you are working for the economic development of the average Ivorian within your context.
Merci. La CNPS est un organisme de sécurité sociale qui applique ce qu'on appelle le système de répartition. C'est un système qui, dans son modèle économique, dit que les travailleurs d'aujourd'hui cotisent pour les retraités d'aujourd'hui, de sorte à établir un équilibre générationnel. Mais on s'est rendu compte que ça ne marche pas. Ça ne crée pas d'excédent. Et donc, on a changé le modèle économique en 2012 en disant les travailleurs d'aujourd'hui vont cotiser pour les retraités d'aujourd'hui et pour les retraités de demain, de sorte à créer des excédents. Comment nous avons fait? Nous avons augmenté l'âge de la retraite qui était de 55 à 60%. Le taux de cotisation qui était à 8, on a discuté avec les partenaires sociaux, c'est eux qui financent le régime, et on leur a dit, au lieu de passer de 8 à 9 ou 10 pour équilibrer, par exemple, sur 5 à 10 ans, passons de 8 à 14, de sorte à créer de la richesse. Et cette richesse, si nous l'investissons, avec, non seulement on contribue au développement du pays, mais on va assurer les retraites sur de longues périodes. Et c'est ce qu'on a fait. Et donc, là où de 2005 à 2011, on avait accumulé 200 milliards de déficit, l'équivalent de 300 millions d'euros de déficit, dès qu'on a mis en place le nouveau système, en 2012, on a fait 8 milliards d'excédents, c'est-à-dire autour de 12 millions d'euros. En 2014, on a fait 33 milliards d'excédents, environ 50 millions d'euros, jusqu'à atteindre en 2021 125 milliards d'excédents, c'est-à-dire l'équivalent de 180 millions d'euros. Tous ces excédents, nous avons investi dans l'économie. Et donc, le portefeuille monétaire qui était de 26 milliards en 2012, c'est-à-dire autour de 40 millions d'euros, est passé aujourd'hui à 675 milliards de CFA, c'est-à-dire plus de 1 milliard d'euros. Nous avons pour objectif d'atteindre 1,5 milliard d'euros de portefeuille monétaire financier en 2025 et 3 milliards d'euros en 2030. Vous voyez qu'en changeant de modèle économique, en ayant conscience que les caisses de sécurité sociale sont un instrument puissant pour la collecte de l'épargne, et du coup, on crée de la richesse, on participe au financement de l'économie, et nous sommes en train d'aller très loin parce que tous ces chiffres que j'ai donnés, ça concerne le régime des salariés du secteur formel. Mais là, depuis 2 ans, l'État de Côte d'Ivoire nous a permis d'étendre la sécurité sociale aux travailleurs du secteur informel et des travailleurs indépendants. Et donc, c'est des ressources qui vont venir s'ajouter encore, puisque vous savez que quand vous commencez à cotiser, le régime est neuf, il faut attendre 20 ans pour que le régime soit à maturité, et pendant cette période, nous allons accumuler des réserves. Et nous avons diversifié nos investissements. Déjà, en termes d'emprunts obligataires vis-à-vis de l'État, nous souscrivons énormément, puisque le portefeuille d'emprunts obligataires était de 4 milliards en 2012, c'est-à-dire 6 millions d'euros. Aujourd'hui, le portefeuille d'emprunts obligataires vis-à-vis de l'État est de 275 milliards, c'est-à-dire près de 400 millions d'euros. Et donc, ça évite que l'État, enfin, on atténue l'endettement de l'État vis-à-vis de l'extérieur, mais aussi on investit dans l'économie. On a 20% de participation dans 4 banques en Côte d'Ivoire. La multinationale Eranov, qui s'occupe d'eau, d'électricité, d'énergie, nous sommes propriétaires de 15% de ce groupe. Et donc nous allons continuer. Nous sommes en train de réfléchir à jouer un rôle important pour résoudre le problème de logement en Côte d'Ivoire, puisque nous voulons créer une pension retraite logement qui permettra aux travailleurs non seulement d'avoir une pension en numéraire, mais aussi...
So, Dennis, I'm going to pick up there on the issue of housing, because as we know from the African Development Bank, we need 2 trillion over the next 10 years to make up for the backlog that we have in housing. So great to look at these sustainable solutions coming to the fore. I want to bring Javier in. Javier, as Director of the Sovereign Wealth Research at IE University, it would be great if you can just give us an overview of the performance of sovereign wealth funds, if you have that information at hand. We may have lost Javier there. I'm going to wait for some indication that Javier is still online, and if you can let me know. But Alain, I'm going to pass to you right now. Ah, there we go. Sorry, I was a little impatient there. Javier. Javier, I'm just going to repeat the question there. Essentially, as director of Sovereign Wealth Fund at IE University, could you share some data points around the performance of sovereign wealth funds?
Thank you very much. Thank you for the question. Thank you to the African Development Bank. Thank you for Dr. Adesina and the African Investment Forum for having me. We have been researching sovereign wealth funds over the last 15 years. We have been tracking their investment. They have changed dramatically. So even the very concept of sovereign wealth fund has changed very, very importantly. So one of the big changes is that out of the 15 last sovereign wealth funds that came to existence, 10 of them have this development economic mission, right? So this is not anymore about just international investments or just stabilization goals. It's about development. So we need to leverage on that, let's say, renewed effort on sovereign wealth funds as catalyzers for economic growth. About trends, let me just give you data points about sovereign wealth funds. 10.4 trillion US dollars. I saw in the video there was probably not correctly updated, or there are debates in the academia about the definition, the perimeter of sovereign wealth funds definition. 10.4 trillion US dollars. It could be the third economy in the world after the US and China, right, if they combine their assets. Second thing I want to mention is that there are at least 98 sovereign wealth funds existing in operation in 69 countries. They typically invest around 100, 150 billion every year in private direct investment deals, right? So we are thinking in patient capital being deployed into long-term projects, from infra, of course, to real estate, to other niche sectors such as student housing, such as alternative sources of energy, including nuclear fusion projects, of course, renewable energy in any form, storage, and energy enhancing trajectories, right? So other key points that I want to mention, just focus more on Africa, is that there are existing 21 sovereign wealth funds in Africa. They represent 21% of all the sovereign wealth funds, but they total yet 83 billion in US dollars. So they represent less than 1% of the total sovereign wealth fund assets globally. Keeping that in mind, that can be interpreted as a good news, right? So there is not a big number of funds you need to focus in order to deploy big checks in capital to be deployed in strategic projects in Africa, right? That's why I believe one of the key elements of the Africa Sovereign Investors Forum that has been recently launched is that they started directly as an association of African sovereign wealth funds with international sovereign wealth funds. I think that directly opens the door to collaboration, to expand explode the capital that is there waiting to be invested into impact projects, right? There is a failure in the market failure that we need to fix, where capital is available and needs are very clearly visible, and we need to make this happen, right? We need to be imaginative, so associations like this can be helpful. We need to be imaginative also in the instruments we use. Of course, we have heard from Dr. Adesina that sovereign wealth funds should play this de-risking role, but they need to also think more imaginatively about ways to define and instrument products that are de-risking in itself the projects where they are proposed, right? So 7 of the
that point of de-risking, Javier, I'm going to jump in here. I'm going to jump in on that point of de-risking projects and bring Obed back into the conversation. You spoke about collaboration, which I think, Obed, if we can get a sense of your engagement as the African Sovereign Investors Forum with Gulf sovereign wealth funds. Give us a sense of what we're seeing from that side and what we are hearing from the international sovereign wealth contingent.
Thank you for that. Thank you for this question. But let me first thank President Adesina and all the team of IFDB for the concrete steps that we have taken together. So far, we have signed a memorandum of understanding to work on the project preparation and project development. And we all know how investment-ready opportunities are critical, not only for the MENA Sovereign Wealth Fund, but for all the institutional investors. The ambition that we share with IFDB is to work on the creation of a real enabling environment for the investment. We should create the condition to let the institutional investor land into our continent. And to do that, we should talk the same way they talk. We have already heard privately some words on the scale, and this is very important. At the ASIF, the African Investment Sovereign Forum, we have the ambition to work together on regional large-scale infrastructure projects that will improve the integration between all the African countries, to improve and to enable the growth, because our mandate as Sovereign Wealth Fund is to prepare a good future for the next generation. At the launch of the African Investment Forum in last June, we hopefully get the support of very important sovereign wealth fund from the region MENA, like ADQ, like the Kuwait Investment Authority and IDA. All have expressed into the Rabat Declaration their support, not only their support to the initiative, but their availability to invest into our continent. And so, I think this is...
I'm going to bring it back there. Sorry, I'm just mindful of time, so please, apologies. This is my role on stage. I'm bringing it back to Alain right now. This Africa Sovereign Investors Forum appears to be a catalyst for huge momentum going forward when we talk about partnerships with sovereign wealth funds in Africa and international. Alain, take us a step further, because we know the stats. We've got 40 million Africans that were pushed below the poverty line as a result of COVID. We're anticipating another 43 million Africans to be pushed down below that poverty line when it comes to 2030 as a result of climate change. President Adesina mentioning COVID, climate and comfort. We know we've got these gaps, $170 billion on infrastructure finance needed on an annual basis, $100 billion looking at investment into broadband in the next, by 2030, to make sure that everyone has access. It's there. You're creating bankable projects. Now let's take the momentum further. Alain.
Well, absolutely. Thank you, Browning. And I have to say, I would agree with everything that Obaid said, of course. I think what you mentioned, which is quite important, is that the gap is so big. And to be honest, we know how to close that gap. And we have examples of projects across all countries, really, that have been implemented. What we need to do now is to do them at scale and faster. And this is one of the reasons why the Africa Investment Forum was created, to accelerate things. But this is also why ASIF is so important, because ASIF is bringing sovereign wealth funds together to have the scale. And the MOU that was signed in Rabat and Obaid with African Development Bank, ASIF and Africa 50 was also a signatory, because we believe in that, that ASIF would help us scale up. It's about now doing faster and at scale. And the recipe is known. This is not something that we're inventing. I mean, we have Azura project in Nigeria. We have the 400 megawatt solar project, Bemban. We have projects everywhere. So we know how to do them. How do we do them faster and at bigger scale? So, this is what we are now figuring out a way to do. And at Africa 50, just one last point, what we've done, focusing on project development, under the leadership of the African Development Bank, we will be announcing at COP the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, to which ASIF is also a partner, that will seek to raise up to $500 million in project development and project preparation to catalyze $10 billion for green assets, green infrastructure assets, African institutions, the FDB leading, Africa 50, ASIF, but other institutions that do as well, coming from non-African countries and multilateral, ready to show the way, scale. And then for the speed, we're going to make sure that we operate almost like private funds because speed is of the essence.
Speed and scale is of the essence, and I just want to take a moment to reflect on the fact that having had these conversations for the last decade on these stages, we are clearly seeing momentum. Now it's about showcasing everything that is happening, and there is speed in the system. Matteo, bringing it back to you, you spoke about regional opportunities, you spoke about the fact that you need the scale, so picking up on what Alain has said, is it the African Continental Free Trade Area that is going to be the next catalyst alongside the African Sovereign Investors Forum?
Yeah, sure. I mean, scale and pace are essential indeed. And in that sense, I mean, the free trade area will certainly enable to have larger assets. I mean, not immediately and necessarily quicker, but at least larger. But let me suggest, I mean, 3 ideas on which we are working in order to do larger and quicker, and in particular with sovereign funds. I mean, the first one is, and especially these days where everyone needs to rebound after COVID and with the difficult times, that's monetization of assets, and not privatization, monetization, and monetization with a purpose. So basically there are large public infrastructure where together with local sovereign funds, we could do more. We could help the governments to reduce their debt, and we could expand, we could add additional services, we could do many things for a temporary period. So that's one, and we are having these discussions with a few governments these days, and hopefully we'll do a few ones. The other one is how can we do public-private partnerships within or for sovereign funds, I would say. And again, that's something we are discussing with some governments. How can we set up a dedicated program for the own funds of the state and attract, on top of this program, international LPs, investors, in order to multiply the effect and reach the scale. And the last one is we all need, and that's what we're trying to do, to invest in new sectors where a lot is needed, not only transport and energy, where many things are being done, but social infrastructure, you mentioned social housing, but as well health and education and digital. I think that's extremely important to do more in these sectors, and in that space, sovereign funds can definitely play a role.
Dennis, coming back to you, if you look at CNPS and the opportunity to invest outside of the Ivory Coast, is that something in the broader thinking as you look at the future? Because part of this conversation has been, let's not stay within our own territories, but let's expand beyond our borders. What's your thinking on that side, Dennis?
Disons que notre priorité, c'est quand même le développement de la Côte d'Ivoire, puisque vous savez que nous sommes un pays en voie de développement. Mais nos investissements s'étendent à l'extérieur via des groupes qui interviennent en Côte d'Ivoire ou bien en Afrique. Et au niveau des caisses de sécurité sociale, nous avons créé un fonds d'investissement avec la Caisse du Cameroun. On doit l'étendre aux autres caisses de sécurité sociale des 14 pays de la zone franc, mais pour l'instant, le fonds est créé avec la Caisse du Cameroun et la Caisse de Côte d'Ivoire. Parce que nous pensons que si nous voulons intervenir dans les infrastructures qui vont relier nos différents pays, il faut un regroupement d'organes de sécurité sociale pour mettre toutes leurs forces ensemble pour faire des investissements inter-États.
We're going into a final round of comments now, and Obaid, I'm going to come back to you. I just wanted to get a sense of the level of enthusiasm of those international sovereign funds that you've been chatting to. How enthusiastic are they about Africa being the last frontier, as we heard President Adesina saying in his opening commentary yesterday, in that you have to be investing in Africa's growth because there is money to be made, essentially. Obaid?
I will say it in few words and in few seconds. I would like to echo the President Adesina words few days ago when he talked about the need of action. He is totally right. Ambition is here. No, we need more action.
We need more action, and we know that the mantra for the Africa Investment Forum is deals, deals, deals. Javier, before we close out, just a final word from your perspective in terms of the academic perspective weighing in. Is this a shifting landscape? Are sovereign wealth funds actually going to be a key part of the solution in Africa's development in the next 5 years?
Definitely. I see a big change in the way sovereign wealth funds talk about themselves in Africa. Now they believe they are catalyzers of growth. They believe they are be able to achieve the sustainable agenda in their economies, and they will be able to cooperate in initiatives like Obeid is leading today and others that will appear in the coming future. I really believe there is an Africa opportunity window today. COP27 is starting next week in Egypt. The ASIF inauguration very recently this same year. And the fact that we will have more and more sovereign wealth funds being established than in any other part of the world in the coming years will be in Africa. So there is a huge interest today in exploring the opportunities that Africa is bringing. Let me give you just one data point. Sovereign wealth funds internationally has been switching from United States to another number of geographies that are now feeling more profitable in the long run. So we are thinking in patient capital being deployed in the middle income economies and in the developing economies that will provide the profitability that is not expected to be in Western economies in the coming decades. So for the first time last year, India, China, and Singapore attracted more investors from sovereign wealth funds than the United States in history. So this is changing. There is a way sovereign wealth funds are exploring the South, the global South, and I think Africa will be the next frontier for sure. There is plenty of opportunities, there is plenty of talent that need to be equipped with the capital to develop their own economy. So I really believe sovereign wealth funds' role is not only to invest, but also to create the structures and the infrastructure that is able to create the economies that need to be growing in the coming decades. So really, not just to crowd out the private sector, but rather crowding all the private players and all the public players that can be convened to invest in the Africa future.
Just been given some clarity that we do in fact have ADQ on the line as well. And I do apologize because I was told as I started the session that we couldn't get ADQ up and running. So we do have, and this is the Abu Dhabi Development Holding Company, and it is Mr. Ahmed Al-Hamadi who is on the line. I apologize profusely, Mr. Al-Hamadi, but perhaps you can give us a sense, because we've been waiting to hear that international standpoint on specifically your view of the sovereign wealth fund environment in Africa. Mr. Al-Hamadi. Do we have Al-Mahadi, Mr. Al-Mahadi on the line?
Senegal. The funds is from Senegal.
Oh, all right. So Alain, you're going to have to help me there because it's a bit of an impromptu. I wasn't given any instruction.
I believe I saw the Francis Demba, the CEO of Francis Senegal, that was on. And if the CEO of Senegal Sovereign Wealth Fund is on, maybe that question should be directed to him.
Absolutely. So, sir, can I get you to input here if you are still with us? And again, huge apologies from my side for skipping you. I think maybe I was...
Hello, everybody. Do you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear, sir.
I have some issues starting my video.
Let's try you again there, sir.
Hello?
We can hear you.
I think my video should be working right now.
We actually can hear you loud and clear. Your video is working. The stage is yours. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. So thank you, Alain, for giving me the opportunity to get to talk to the distinguished guest. So my salutation and my congratulations to the President, Dr. Adesina, and to all the guests who are present at this event. I'm really sorry to not be able to present physically. So I'm doing this call from my office here in Dakar. And has said Obeid Omran, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, we have a role to play in the development of investment in the infrastructure. And the first role we have to play is bringing private sector financing into our countries. And as we have been doing that in the last years, I think Mathieu from Merijam put it very well. We have been working with them since 2015 to develop projects and to invest in different sectors, solar, and then now transportation, and then we are together in the water area. And the next step for us is mutualize. So we have to work together between Sovereign Wealth Fund. That's why we put the platform ASIF, and we have to mutualize. As the gentleman from Côte d'Ivoire, I did not catch his name, said the case the Sécurité Sociale from different countries are trying, are putting together a fund. For me, it's really important to mutualize the fund that is being set by those cases, the Sécurité Sociale, the CDC, and all others. So instead of having separate fund, at least we can have somehow a solid fund managers that will be able to attract other investors, so that we can co-invest at the project level in terms of development, and then in terms of let's say operation when we reach financial close. So this is really important. We have to mutualize. We have to go further. So this means that we need to bring our government. Also, I see that the Minister of Finance, the Honorable Minister of Finance of Nigeria is present, and we have to bring our Minister of Finance and Economy to understand this new way of doing public investment, and also having the public sector intervene in the development of projects. It's not only about setting PPP policies, but it's about using these instruments that are the Sovereign Wealth Fund in the right way to be the right proxy with the private sector. So there are some reform, some change in the way many institutions used to operate, and this is also the case for the DFI, for AFDB, and for others. I know that AFDB is doing a lot, and since the last, what I have seen since 2015 is that AFDB has shifted and integrated this change of paradigm, and then AFDB, through the cooperation of different countries, is also very supporting the Sovereign Wealth Fund, and also at the infrastructure level, but also at the SME levels. So as the Sovereign Wealth Fund in our mission, we have not only to invest in infra, but also we have to invest in SMEs. And the IFDB has been doing that. So kudos to the governor, Mr. Adesina, for the president, Mr. Adesina, for this work. And also I am really focused with Obeid and our other colleagues from Ghana, from Rwanda, from Gabon, from Djibouti, from Egypt, to strengthen our ASIF platform and to be the anchor partner of investors in our countries. And as it has been put earlier by the president and by Obeid, we have to give the example and invest in each other's country, so that we show the example of de-risking and saying that, okay, it is safe to invest in our countries. Our market are the one growing at a pace of 40% each 10 years. So you can come invest securely. You have very good partners in the Sovereign Wealth Fund, and we can execute, and we can have the support of our countries in this journey.
Thank you, sir.
One thing
I'm
which
going
is
to.
really important is that in the coming years, yeah.
I do have to interject there, but thank you so much. I do apologize for keeping you waiting. And I have to say that Senegal, sir, has been put forward as an example of where everything is being done to elevate the environment, the economic development in Senegal. Many projects afoot, so congratulations, and I know that there are many partners here that are working with you. I want to go to just closing comments very quickly, and as we move to COP27 happening in Sharm el-Sheikh, many of us will be there from the 6th to the 18th of November. Could I make a request? We're talking about bankable projects, we're talking about de-risking projects. We know that energy is a huge problem across the African continent. 600 million people don't have access to energy. Could we please put some sovereign wealth energy with the African Sovereign Investors Forum into creating bankable projects, utilizing natural gas as a transition fuel alongside renewables to make sure that every single African has access to clean energy? Alain.
Well, sure, absolutely. What we will be doing at COP, advocating behind our leaders that will be there, President Adesina will be there, many African presidents will be there, is to advocate very strongly for a just energy transition, where we'll be pushing very hard for a significant increase in green infrastructure assets, through a big initiative that my chairman, Dr. Adesina, will announce at COP. It's called Asia, but I will leave the full announcement for my chairman to do. Big and bold on climate asset, climate-friendly asset. But what we will also continue to do at COP and beyond COP is to advocate for something that Dr. Adesina mentioned earlier, which is that we have $2.1 trillion of assets under management by institutional investors in Africa. Let's figure out a way to at least allocate 10% of that amount. That's $200 billion for infrastructure. If we manage to do something along those lines, we will close the gap, that very gap of infrastructure that we're talking for some time. So we can do stuff from our own resources while we are also advocating to get green climate finance from international partners, and we will continue to do so. We do our domestic resource mobilization and international advocacy for us to get additional money.
I cannot wait to hear more about AGIA, and the solutions we're going to table on that front. Matteo, can I have your commitment that you're going to start deploying into the energy space from a Meridian perspective?
Oh, sure, we do, and I mean, we already do. Mostly in clean energy, because with the long-term view, we do believe that that's where the risk return will be the most attractive. But we work on many new projects in that field. We'll keep on doing more, and we'll not only finance, but we'll develop.
Develop. A final word to you, Dennis. I know Côte d'Ivoire is your focus right now in terms of energy. From a CNPS perspective, this has got to be a very clear focus for you as well, in terms of energy and what you're doing in the energy space for renewables.
Absolument. Je vous ai dit que nous sommes actionnaires dans Uranov, donc qui est dans l'eau, l'électricité et tout ce qui est gaz et tout ce qui concerne l'énergie. Nous comptons vraiment accompagner ces projets. Il y a un projet qui est en cours en ce moment en Côte d'Ivoire à Tinkou, dans lequel nous sommes actionnaires à 15%. Et donc c'est un secteur qui est important pour le développement de l'Afrique. Et je voudrais remercier le président Adesina de m'avoir donné l'occasion de montrer ce qu'une caisse de sécurité sociale peut faire et sa place dans l'investissement et pour le développement de nos pays.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you. Please, a round of applause for my esteemed panelists and for our online participants. Thank you for being such a great audience. And let's go forward. Deals. The Africa Investment Forum is leading the charge when it comes to Africa's development. We're going to hear a lot more at COP27, so brace yourselves. Thank you.